The black and the white of the law, and everything in between. This is Legally Speaking.
Welcome to Legally Speaking, legal information to help you in your everyday life. I'm Christy Draper. I'm going to be your host today. I'm an attorney. And with me today, I have Nathan Jackson, an attorney as well. And I have Sergeant Elmer Horn, who is the Training Division Sergeant at the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. Today, we're going to be talking about gun laws and how gun laws apply to citizens today. No, we're not going to get into Second Amendment debate. We're just going to talk about what the laws are, how they apply, what you need to know on a day-to-day basis, because this is legal information to help you in your everyday life. Wanted to start off just real generally, openly about what is the law in the state of Georgia as to whether you can have guns in your home, in your car. Let's just start off with the basics and then take it from there and get into things that are a little more specific, like gun permits and different types of guns and what you can have, what you can't have. Can you go into Walmart with a gun? Got a bunch of stuff to cover. So who would like to start off with explaining what you can and cannot have in your home? Let's start off with the home. Well,
I'll start with the home.
Okay.
First, let me say that everything we're talking about should not be construed as legal advice.
Correct.
It's very important that if you have any legal questions, you should consult with an attorney. That said, in the state of Georgia, you can keep a firearm in your home, in your vehicle, or in your place of business, provided you may legally possess a firearm and you are of age. Generally speaking, that's age 18 or older. And a non-felon, you don't have any other particular reasons under the law that you could not own a firearm. Within your home, there are no restrictions as to where you can keep the firearms or whether or not they be loaded, unloaded, or locked up. Generally speaking, however, if you've got a tool as dangerous as a firearm, it's best to keep it in a very secure location, especially if there are any children involved. It's advisable to always keep your firearms in a gun safe and always know where all of your firearms are. In regards to on your person, if you are at your house or at your place of business, provided that your place of business is not somewhere like the courthouse, and the business owner gives you permission, you may have the firearm either concealed or exposed to view. As far as in your vehicle, you may have the firearm in your vehicle in the glove compartment, in the console, or fully exposed to view if it's pistol. If it is a rifle, it can be in the rifle rack or in the trunk unloaded. It's very important that if the gun is not visible for a long arm, that it is unloaded. And you also need to know that under Georgia law, if the ammunition is attached to the firearm in any way, meaning if you've got a sling that has shotgun shells or rifle shells, and that sling is attached to your rifle, even if it doesn't have any ammunition in it, technically it's loaded under the law. So have it separated from that ammunition when you have it in your vehicle. As far as your pistols go, they may be loaded, they may be ready to go. You simply need to make certain that it's a gun that is safe enough to have loaded in a vehicle that might jostle around.
Okay, that was a lot of information real quick. Maybe we should go back just a little bit. You mentioned that you have to be able to have a gun. You have to be 18 and not be a convicted felon. What if somebody is on first offender probation or something? Can you go into what is a felon, what is not a felon, first offender probation, some of those areas that people get confused about?
Well, generally speaking, a felon is someone who has been convicted of a felony. If you've been convicted of a felony and not had your rights restored, then you're not going to be able to carry a firearm. Incidentally, one of the things that's very important to know, if you are a felon but your wife is not a felon and you have a gun in the home, it's her gun, so you don't have that gun there. You are not violating any laws. That would be incorrect. If you have control over a firearm and access to a firearm is considered control, then that would be a violation of law. As far as first offender status goes, generally speaking, first offender is a dismissal after completion of terms, so there's not a conviction for felony. But again, before you bet your freedom on it, talk to a lawyer about it. As far as other legal reasons why you could not have a firearm, if you're on probation, almost always a term of probation is going to be that you do not have access to firearms. That means not even in the house. If you have any questions, you need to ask your probation officer or your attorney about that, but better safe than sorry. Additionally, most times if you are under a temporary restraining order, you also may not have access to firearms, and a temporary restraining order or a TPO can also stop you from being able to purchase firearms in the future.
Okay, and I completely forgot about the whole restraining order, protective order, and how that can affect somebody's right to have a gun. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we see commonly these days, is restraining orders and protective orders, and people aren't necessarily made aware that they can't possess any weapons when there is a protective order against them. Was there anything that you wanted to add as far as guns in the home? And I want to get into some more issues with the car, but I thought we'd kind of break it down. And
in the home also, you know, a lot of people ask about, well, what about my son or daughter, or you know, our granddaughter or grandson that we want to let go out in the back on our back pasture and target shoot or do something of that nature. And a lot of times we tell them, you know, as long as you give that child permission to have that weapon, and always you want to make sure that you supervise any child handling a weapon, because things can happen.
well, that's another interest, because we still have some areas out here that are
Very
rural, and so there are people that will, you know, just go out in the backyard and start shooting at tin cans or whatever. What I didn't even, when we talked about this previously, didn't even talk about that. What are the laws with that?
The law states that you can't fire a firearm within 150 feet from a roadway, and it's not from a home. You know, that there's a misconception sometimes that they think you can't fire it from the house or a structure, but it's actually the roadway. It's 150 feet from the roadway. And they want you to be far enough away that, you know, it's safe. But you want to use some common sense in this. You want to shoot into a backstop that's going to stop that bullet that you're shooting. You don't want to be shooting at a tree that if you miss, it's going to go into your neighbor's, or, you know, a bullet's going to go until it stops or hits something or it goes into the ground. So you're responsible for that bullet when you pull that trigger. So you want to make sure that that bullet's going to be somewhere safe when it stops.
Gotcha. And you certainly don't want to do anything that's going to alarm your neighbors.
Oh, yes.
So
exactly.
take that into consideration as well.
If you alarm your neighbors, we're probably going to come knock on your door and ask you, you know, what are you doing?
Right. And then another thing is you don't need to be drinking when you're shooting your firearms in your backyard.
The law clearly states that you're not to handle any weapons while drinking or doing drugs.
Right.
And actually something that a lot of people don't know, you're not allowed to operate a firearm when you are impaired from drug use. That also means any legal drugs that you have a prescription for. If they impair you, you are not allowed to operate firearms. So make certain that you are completely unimpaired or stay away from the guns.
All right. And I guess that would fall into the heavy machinery category on those labels. So.
It absolutely would.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And then moving then to the car. So the glove box, the console are fine for handguns. Long guns need to be in the back unloaded. Did I get that right in a nutshell?
Well, if you're going to have a long gun in your vehicle and you're going to put it out of sight, then it has to be unloaded. If it's in sight, then it can be in a loaded position, but it has to be in plain view. So if an officer were to walk up to the vehicle, he would have no problem seeing it.
Okay, such as a gun in a gun rack.
Gun in a gun rack, you know, things of that nature.
Like what about laying in the back seat?
Laying in the back seat, as long as it's in plain view, then according to the law, it's okay.
Okay.
But I very caution folks on laying a gun in the back seat driving down the road, because if you have a car wreck, where's that gun going? You don't know.
Right. I was just trying to determine where I should and should not put my shotgun in my car.
Right.
So, but for safety reasons, it should go all the way in the back, unloaded.
Yes.
Okay.
Secure that weapon. You want to make sure it's secure.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense. So, because if you do have a car wreck, you don't want that slamming around loaded.
I wouldn't, you know, especially if it's in the back seat and you slam into someone in the front, it's going to come up there with you. And guns are made of steel; they will hurt.
Right, right. And they're deadly weapons.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and another factor to consider when you're storing a firearm in your car is you're advertising that you have a gun. Well, that can have a lot of different effects, but for the bad guys out there, what that says is there's a gun that I can get as soon as that person leaves the vehicle. So if you've got your gun in a gun rack, and it looks really cool because you've got this great stainless steel bolt-action Remington 700 and a loopholed scope and an extended mag and all the bells and whistles, and you're so proud of it, you've got it back there, and as you're driving down the road, everybody sees it and loves it. Well, when you are at Arbor Place Mall going and buying a DVD, you come back and your back window's smashed out and your beautiful gun is now somebody else's beautiful gun. So it's best to keep in mind that when you have something exposed, you're advertising it to people who might want it more than you. So keep that in mind when making the decision where to put it.
That's a good point. That could end deer season for you real quick.
It definitely could.
Yes.
And not only the mall, service station, when you just jump out to run in to get a drink or something out of the convenience store, and you're just going to be about a minute. And all it takes is a couple of seconds to knock a window out.
Yes, yeah. People are very wise about these things these
Yeah.
days.
And that's how the bad guys get their guns. They don't go out here and purchase them like we do.
Right.
They're stealing them from
They're
cars
stealing them
and,
from everywhere.
and homes and
Homes, cars, and places wherever they can get them.
all right, and that goes back to Nathan's point about if you have guns at home, you should keep them secured in a
That's right.
safe because it's not only better for your family, but if your house does get broken into, it'll be harder for them to get the guns.
It's also a good idea while we're talking about guns getting stolen is to have a separate copy of your serial numbers written down and a description of the guns. And it wouldn't hurt now that we have cameras on everything we carry now with us, just to have a picture of them. That way, if it does get taken, it gives us something more to go on to find that weapon.
Right.
Absolutely. And as long as we're talking about guns being stolen, one other point of advertising that people don't think about is bumper stickers and firearm stickers that show that you are pro-gun. I am very pro-gun. However, I do not have a sticker on my car that says, I love guns, so please break into my glove compartment and see if I'm carrying one. If you want to support gun rights, by all means do. Don't advertise on your vehicle because people see that as a sign of where the good stuff is.
Right. So I saw some stickers like the little stick people figures for families, but it was actually guns on the back window. So that's probably not a real good idea to advertise how many guns you're carrying in your car. So that's a good point as well. If someone has a gun in their car and if they are getting pulled over for speeding or running a stop sign or some simple traffic violation, what is your recommendation as far as letting the law enforcement officer know that you have a gun? Do you tell them? Do you not tell them? How should somebody go about handling that situation?
Well, there's kind of two rules of thought here, okay? And whether you tell them you have a weapon or you don't tell them you have a firearm in the car, it's really up to you. There's no law stating that you have to tell a law enforcement officer that they have a weapon in their car. But that is your decision. Now, if an officer asks you if you have any weapons in the car, which they mostly all of them that I know of and help trained, are going to ask you if you have any weapons in the car or on you. If they ask that question, then by all means, it would behoove you to let that officer know there is a weapon there. Sometimes, an officer will stop you and there will not be a need for him to rise to ask those questions. And if you do tell him, then there's things that you should expect that's going to happen to you on that traffic stop that you should be aware of. And a couple of those is, the first thing he's going to ask you to step out of the car. He's going to separate you from that weapon and you from the weapon. So because he doesn't know who you are, he just wants to make a safe area for him to operate in. And so he's going to separate you from the vehicle. He's going to ask you where the gun or the weapon is, the firearm. He's going to go in and retrieve it, unload it, make it safe. He's going to run the weapon to make sure that it is not stolen. And he's going to run you to make sure you're not a convicted felon, that you're in the legal right to have that. And if you have a firearm permit, it would be a good idea when you hand him the license to hand him the firearm permit if you're going to tell him the weapon's there. That way that he already knows what he's working with and then people are on the up and up. But, if you're a convicted felon or something, those are the ones that usually don't tell us. We usually have to find those in the course of the investigation that we do. So, those things are going to happen. You're going to be asked to step out of the car at the very least.
But I would imagine it'd be a lot worse for you if you haven't disclosed there's a weapon in the car and it just happens to get found by the officer?
Then we see where you're trying to be, hide things from us. And then anytime you start trying, we feel like you're hiding things, then there's got to be an underlying reason. Breaking the law, any of those number of things is people to be deceitful. And so we try to, that's when we really start doing our job and investigating why you're trying to be deceitful for us. And so it would behoove you to be honest and upfront to start with. An officer will be more like to treat you a lot better off if he's not thinking you're lying to him.
Your chances of ending up face down on the ground are greater if you go ahead and disclose.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, pretty much.
That's all you got to tell me.
One word of advice: if you do have a weapon in your vehicle and we stop you, the first thing you don't want to do is jump out of that car, because that automatically puts the officer on heightened risk, and you may be looking at the end of a barrel of a pistol if you do that on an officer at night, especially at night in an area that you may be in, and so don't just jump out. Wait for the officer to approach you.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover as far as guns in cars?
One other thing is, the law does state, the 18-year-old can possess a weapon, but they can't possess it in a car because the law states that you must be eligible to get a permit in order to carry that weapon in your vehicle. And an 18-year-old is not eligible to get a permit. They can't go out and buy a firearm or a handgun, but say if my son or daughter were to have, if I wanted to give them one when they were 18, I could give them one, but he could only carry it at home or in his place of business or something. But he has to be eligible to get that permit. And you have to be 21 to get that permit.
Or hunting.
Or hunting.
Yes, hunting is very important around here,
yes.
So got to make that clear.
Have to be on a sporting exposition, as they call it in the law.
Gotcha.
There is one other very important thing to keep in mind with cars. Cars are mobile. Georgia is where we are discussing these laws.
Correct.
However, if you cross over state lines, laws can change dramatically, and what is completely legal here can be a felony in another state. It is always advisable to seek some sort of legal opinion for whatever state you are traveling into. It is also important to note that while cities and counties cannot unfairly regulate firearms in the state of Georgia, we actually have a preemption against that which stops them from being able to do that. There can be certain rules and laws that they have got in place that may be counterintuitive. They don't necessarily make a lot of sense. So if you're going to be somewhere, especially for an extended period of time, it's important to know what the laws are for that particular area as well. But basic rule of thumb is, if you're going to leave the state of Georgia, understand what the laws are for whatever state or states you were going into, because you want to come back to Georgia as opposed to stay in the Gray Bar Motel in another state.
That is correct. It just reminded me of, like in Virginia, you can't have a radar detector in your car. So imagine what their gun laws are like in Virginia.
Don't carry a handgun to New Jersey. They don't play well.
Well, I was going to ask, why would anybody go to New Jersey, but we'll leave that alone.
Don't go to New Jersey with a handgun. You may not come back.
So we'll leave that alone. Well, and I wanted to touch a little bit, though, on taking guns to your place of business, because when you were discussing that, it made me think about how, though, depending on where you, like if you work for the school board, there's a totally different set of rules. You can't take guns onto school property at all. So if you work for a school...
The law has actually a little changed.
Oh, has it? Okay.
School property.
Well, it might be county by county, because I know.
Actually, it's statewide. There's a statewide law that you can carry a firearm or a handgun on school property as long as you leave it in the car and you're conducting your business. As soon as you step out of the car with it, then you're in violation. But it has to be in a locked compartment in the car. While you're on property, you can go in, pick up your child, or because they don't put lock boxes. This is the way I explained it in our public handgun class at the sheriff's office. They don't put lock boxes at the end of the driveway for you to check your weapon. So when you're out moving around in the public, you're doing your ordinary thing that you're given the right as a citizen to do. But when you pull up on their property, they don't have lock boxes for you to check your weapon at the window. So.
But it might be different for the employees.
Well, there is a law for that also. They've covered a lot of things, but there's a law that's saying that they can't base employment for you to have a weapon in your vehicle. Can't if you don't have a secure parking lot, and that would be with a parking attendant and fence and all that stuff. so they can't let you have a weapon in your vehicle as long as it's in a locked compartment, but you can't take it out of the car.
Well, I have a friend that I'll have to update her on that.
Oh yeah, she can carry it in the car, but she has to lock it in the car. And it has to be in a locked compartment on the car.
All right, I could see that would be a bit of a danger to start carrying your weapons into a school,
Oh
though.
well, yeah, that'd be very dangerous because the school resource officers in Douglas County will have you'll meet them very up close and personal if you start carrying your weapon around that school.
They're very nice, but you don't want to meet them
not in that
way.
sense, 'cause that raises a different height of awareness.
Right. Well, and that kind of leads, I think, into getting into the open carry law in the state of Georgia. And do you need a permit? What is sometimes we hear this stuff about open carry, and what exactly does that mean in the state of Georgia?
Well, in the state of Georgia, we are an open carry state, which means if you qualify for a firearms permit, you may carry openly. That said, is it necessarily a good idea? Well, that's a decision that we could have hours and hours of discussion on. I strongly recommend going to georgiacarry.org, which is a fantastic resource site to be able to see the pros and cons of carrying openly. My personal opinion is it is better not to advertise that you have a firearm, because people who are afraid of firearms are going to be intimidated by you, and the bad guys are going to know that you're the first threat that they need to take out. So if you're going to carry, it's better to have a concealed carry permit so that no one knows if you've got it. You're not going to make people around you uncomfortable, because not everybody is enlightened enough to realize that an armed society is a polite society. But the simple fact is that if you are armed and nobody knows, that only helps you out. Whereas if you carry openly, that's not necessarily the case. I'm not against it, but it's not something that I would advise, especially for someone who has just started out with firearms.
Because it makes you a target, and it might make people uncomfortable, and people might end up calling the sheriff's department, I would imagine.
They're going to come and ask you what you're doing and why you got the weapon, and again, you'll be ran to make sure you're not wanted and the gun's not, stolen, and you're not a felon. And you'll have to go through all that, and it'll take 15, 20 minutes of your time, and is it really worth it? Is the way I look at it.
You probably want to get in and out of Walmart a little more quickly than that.
Exactly, and then out of sight, out of mind is a good rule of thumb. If you're going to carry, go ahead and get the permit. It's not, if you're eligible for the permit, it doesn't take but about 2 weeks to get it. It'll cost you, somewhere around $80 to $90 to get it. So it's worth it,
right?
Because then you can carry concealed, and you don't have to worry
and
about
not freak everybody out in Walmart and Target.
There's a lot of folks, their children, and a lot of people don't want that around their kids, and all. So they really get nervous. We show up on a call, they get nervous with us there with a weapon. So, you see some.
Well, that's because they're afraid they're going to be ran through GCIC.
Well, see, that might be the
case. they're afraid you're going to find out they're wanted. What is what do you have to do to get a permit in the state of Georgia?
In the state of Georgia, you go to our probate office at court here, probate office up here, and you see the nice ladies up there behind the desk. They'll take your money. It's about $15 for the processing fee, and then they'll send you over here to the UPS store beside Kroger, and you'll get your fingerprints done, and that costs you about $80. And in about 2 weeks, you'll get it in the mail with your picture on it. It looks like an ID now.
Right, and that's something that's new, right?
Very new, yes.
With the ID on it. Are they still? Is it just a picture now, or does it still have your fingerprint?
Still has your thumbprint on it, but it also has a picture on it, and gets a little more difficult to try to duplicate.
Is that something with the picture? Is that something specific to Douglas County, or is that something that's statewide now?
I believe that is statewide. Okay. I've seen several here in Douglas County, but I believe it is statewide.
So when somebody has that permit in hand, how does that change their rights, I guess you could say? What additionally does that give them the right to do with the weapon? Carry it concealed?
It gives you the right to carry the weapon in a concealed manner, and concealed simply means covered. Generally speaking, covered in a holster of some sort. The law fairly recently changed. It used to be illegal to have ankle holsters for firearms for civilians. That is no longer the case. Which is good, because sometimes an ankle holster is absolutely perfect.
I was thinking the same thing.
They would go with your shoes so well. But hip holsters, shoulder holsters, any kind of holster that is going to allow you to cover the firearm with a piece of clothing so that it can't be seen is now permissible once you have that. That said, your permit should have listed on it, and if not in statute, it specifically lists out the areas that you cannot go. But there's something else that a lot of people don't understand. If you were to go to the Goodwill here on Fairburn Road, there's a large sign that says, possession of firearms on premises are not allowed. It is not illegal for you to go in to that place of business with your firearm. However, it is a violation of what they are asking you to do, and if that is found, then you will get a criminal trespass warning, and if you go back onto that property, you will be arrested. So it is best to know wherever you happen to go what their position on firearms are. My personal view is if there is a business that does not support an individual's right to carry a firearm, then I don't need to support that business. But that's my point of view.
Right, because we're not going to go into Second Amendment.
That's right.
Today.
Also, your bars that sell alcohol, it's not, can't carry that weapon in there unless the owner of that bar gives you permission, and that's to protect some of the bouncers in Atlanta and Forsyth, areas that carry the armed guards or security guards there at that place of business. But any place you put alcohol and firearms, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I don't really think I want too many people walking around Taco Mac with a gun.
They have a hard time driving. I don't want giving them a firearm too.
It's just more heavy machinery they shouldn't be operating.
Exactly.
Well, and I didn't even think to ask this about, can women carry guns in their purses? Do you have to have a permit to do that?
Yes, you do need a permit to do that if you're going to carry in your purse, because that is covered or concealed, and you do need that permit. But you can carry that.
Can you have your gun in your purse in your car?
Yes.
Okay. Does it need? And again, it's kind of like the same rules that apply to any gun you have in your glove box or anywhere unexposed.
Yeah. Well, the firearm, the handgun, there's difference between the long gun and the handgun. The handgun can be loaded and concealed. The long gun is the one that cannot be loaded, concealed with or without a permit. The long gun is specifically for, they specifically name the long gun. The handgun is, my theory on it, and I'm sure y'all are the same way, that why would I carry a paperweight around with me? I mean, if I'm going to carry a weapon to protect me, I want it to be ready to do what I need it to do. And so the handguns can be loaded in your vehicle.
Gotcha. Okay. And there's different, from what I understand, I know just enough to probably be dangerous, but there's different classes of guns as well, and different rules that apply to the different classes of guns. Would one of y'all or both of y'all like to explain what all that means in nice layman's and women's terms?
Well, I will be more than happy to do that. I will also say that some of the best shooters I know are women, so
that is a very good response.
They frequently outshoot me.
Especially knowing your wife, that is a very good response.
There are firearms that are covered under the National Firearms Act. Those firearms are specifically things that would be listed as select fire or machine guns, meaning firearms that fire more than one time per single pull of the trigger. Interestingly, under Georgia law, if they fire more than 6 times with one pull of the trigger, they are machine guns, but otherwise they're not. It's still a violation of federal law, though, so it doesn't make much difference, but it's an interesting curiosity. So machine guns and select fire firearms. Short-barreled rifles, meaning a rifle whose barrel is less than 16 inches in length or that has an overall length of less than 23 inches. Short-barrel or sawed-off shotguns, which are shotguns that are less than 18 inches in barrel length. And then any other weapons and destructive devices. Any other weapons are going to be things like umbrella guns, Destructive devices are going to be things like grenade launchers,
Bazookas.
RPGs, all neat things that
about
unfortunately
cannons?
my wife won't let me have. Cannons are actually covered differently because the vast majority of cannons are black powder. Because they are black powder, they fall under a different classification and are not covered generally under the National Firearms Act.
Yeah, since we know somebody that has a few cannons.
We do indeed. The National Firearms Act requires that you pay a tax stamp for each item that you purchase. One of the things that I didn't mention was silencers. If you wish to purchase a silencer in the state of Georgia, you certainly can. It takes about 3 months to be approved, and it takes a $200 tax stamp and proper application to the BATFE. Once you have done that, they will give you back...
The BATFE?
Yes, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
Break it down.
That's right. Sorry. And when you make this application, if they grant the application, the person selling you the silencer or the machine gun or the grenade launcher or whatever cool new toy you've got is going to say, we've received this approval, you can come and pick it up, and then you may go and pick it up. There are restrictions to NFA devices that we don't have time to go over, but it's a very specialized area. You're basically talking about something called Class 3. You hear people all the time say, do you have a Class 3 permit? I hear that when people ask me about my silencer.
Daily.
Do you have a permit?
Daily I'm hearing that.
You do not. You do not get a Class 3 permit. You get a tax stamp for each Class 3 device. And if you have not had the pleasure of shooting a Class 3 firearm, by all means talk to somebody and write that straight away, because it's a lot of fun.
Yes. It is a lot of fun.
And that's what it's really about, right?
Yeah, that's
the
it.
fun, the fun. Anything else you want to add to what Nathan said about the...
You know, it's just when you do that, just make sure that you have that paperwork, because you know, you don't want somebody come kicking in your door in the middle of the night because you bought some things that you weren't supposed to buy. You know, the guys dressed up in those black outfits with, you know, ATF or FBI on the front of their vest is not a pleasant way to wake up in the middle of the night.
Right. I can imagine a few feds busting down the
Oh,
door
yeah.
would not
That
be
was
it.
not a good
That's not
thing.
the alarm clock you want.
No, not at all. Not over a silencer or you know, a short shotgun or something. That wouldn't be something you'd want to do.
Gotcha,
Right.
gotcha. And I wanted to touch on also that, because we have covered so much material here, and some of it is a little confusing sometimes, even though y'all obviously got all this down pat. But thankfully, especially you, since you're out there training people, and
We have to deal with it daily.
There you go. There you go. What would you suggest people that are just getting interested in firearms and wanting to learn more? Y'all have a clinic at the Sheriff's
Actually,
Department,
we do.
correct?
We offer a class once a month at the Sheriff's Office. It's our public handgun class. You can go on our website at sheriff.douglas.ga.us and go under handgun, our programs, and go to our public handgun class. Pull up the application, send it in. We do it's free of charge. You bring your weapon, your ammo. We go over our gun laws, we go over shooting fundamentals, and then we'll take you back into the indoor range and let you shoot. And it's a eye-opening experience for some people, because especially if they've never really shot their weapon and they want to learn more, or a lot of times we see husbands send their wives and say, you need to learn how to shoot this. They shoot it once, lay it down, and says, I'm done, I don't want this no more. And then we have some that outshoot the husband, and I tell them they should worry.
right, I was going to say.
That would be my wife.
Exactly, mine too. She got kicked out of the hunting club because she outshot most of the guys at the hunting club, so she can't come back.
And that's once a month for free at the Sheriff's
Once a
Department.
month for free.
Okay, well that's great information, because again, that is a lot to understand, and you can talk about the
Very
laws are one thing, but actually handling a gun are
Yeah. And
totally
we give
different.
a handout with the laws written down, so that way you don't try to have to memorize it. You can go back and look and familiarize yourself. And we cover the different states that recognize our permits, but that's where the internet is a great thing now. You can go online and pick up their state laws on their weapons, because we have to, just like the speeding laws. When you're driving a car, you have to obey their traffic laws, just as you do Georgia traffic laws, and some are different. Same way with the firearms. Some of them are different. You have to know what they are.
And I think we're kind of have covered just about everything, but you were talking about taking pictures of your firearms, writing down the the numbers and
serial numbers.
Serial numbers. And are you supposed to register your firearms in the state of Georgia, or what?
Actually, the state of Georgia, when you purchase a firearm, there's not a registry like you would a car. There's not a database that registers your vehicle. So if we run the serial number, we're not going to know that weapon come back to you and you bought it on this day or that day and you have a license or not have a license. We don't have that kind of database. All we do is when you run the serial number is if somebody has reported that weapon stolen. That's why it's so important to write down your serial number, so when they do get stolen, we can put it on our database. So that way when we run a serial number, then we can know if it's stolen or not. And that's the most important part of it.
Right. So that's just a good practice to jot down all your serial numbers.
Just like you would your TV and your VCR and all that stuff, that a lot of people don't do that, after they get broke into and stuff are gone, man, I wish I'd done that.
I wish I'd written that down.
Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20.
Always.
But yeah, it's always a good thing that way, especially firearms, because, when you put firearms out on the street, you never know what they're going to be used for. And, we see on the news every day where somebody's been shot on the news. Just about every day, and it's usually from somebody's firearm that got taken somewhere.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. Do either of y'all have anything else that you want to add? Anything you think we skipped?
I'll add briefly. Your question about registration of firearms. Mm-hmm. Georgia law actually has preemption against that as well. Not only will the state not require registration of firearms, but counties and municipalities, cities, are not allowed to do that either. When you purchase a new firearm from a federal firearms licensed dealer, you have to fill out the appropriate paperwork and be approved. However, that's not quite the same as a registration, and you may purchase firearms from individuals. You may purchase firearms at gun shows from private sellers without filling out any of that paperwork, but you must always be careful in what you're purchasing, because just because the individual selling you the firearm looks honest enough and you're getting a price that's good but not really good, the gun could still be stolen. And so you can contact the police department and ask them, can you run these numbers for me, just to verify whether or not the firearm is stolen. And at a lot of gun shows you will see sheriff's departments that are there that will be more than happy to run the numbers before you make that private sale.
Of course, it could be ballistics later on that link your gun up to something, and
Let's
then you
hope
find
not.
out why you got such a good deal on it.
That is possible, but generally speaking, bad guys are going to steal guns, good guys are going to buy guns.
Yep.
And most bad guys aren't going to go to gun shows where you've got a lot of people
And witnesses.
like Elmer and myself who are law-abiding citizens who just really enjoy firearms. So chances are you're buying a legal gun, but just make sure.
It's just like buying a car. You want to make sure that you're getting what you say that you're getting. And in Douglas County, if you call us, we'll come out to your house, and that way we can look at the weapon, run the weapon, and if there is a problem, then we'll help you from that point out. But we'll also, make sure you're getting a square deal on that.
And I would imagine if somebody finds a weapon in the creek behind their house, they should really give you guys a call.
Yeah, don't pick it up. Go ahead and call us. Let us come out and retrieve it. That way, we might need to take pictures of that, where it's at.
Because I think that is the common way they get rid of them. Throw them in the creek or
ballistic
river.
that we have to run in. Right. So, yeah.
Don't just think, oh, look, I found something for free. Yay.
Exactly, yeah. Especially when you're dealing with a firearm.
Right.
That's always not a good thing.
Right. Well, and then you've got the safety concerns also
Exactly.
of is it going to fire correctly and that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Oh, that's a totally
Yeah,
different
that's a
area
different
there.
show.
Yes.
Different show.
Not necessarily legally speaking. That would be another show.
That would be the next show I believe we would do, correctly making sure the weapon will fire correctly.
Right. I don't know if Wes will let us do that one
I don't think
for
he
the segment. So, well, I appreciate both of you coming today and going over all this material and all these interesting things. And I guess we should maybe what kind of guns do we have here today?
Well, the rifle is a Kel-Tec 223 semi-automatic magazine-fed rifle. It actually folds up. It has a folding bipod, and it has a little red dot scope on it. Write all of that off as loud, fast, and fun.
Okay, there you go.
And then
Compact.
very compact.
nice.
And then not quite good enough for your purse.
I was
though.
gonna. That was my
Nah,
next question. You read my
You
mind.
need more of a big book bag.
That's right.
I could get a big bag.
The other gun is actually a replica of a number 3 Russian by Smith & Wesson, and that is the firearm that actually saved Smith & Wesson when the Tsar of Russia ordered a great deal of them. Shortly thereafter, he and Anastasia and the rest of the family were done away with. However, they had already paid Smith & Wesson, and that kept the company going, and it is still going to this day.
So now we've got a little history as well now. So we've got
Hey, that
legal.
was for free too.
Yeah, there you go. I know. We've gotten a little history, a little law, and even a little fashion sense. So
There you go.
and that's always
A
important.
very little fashion.
Yes.
Yes, well, but there are people that will make very nice gun holsters for you. So if you decide you want to carry concealed, and you can look around and find some really nice
Internet's
ones.
a wild thing. You can find about anything and everything you want or don't want on it.
Right. Yes, you can get them tailor-made if you so
Yes,
choose.
you can. As much money as you want to spend.
Right. Well, it's kind of like the gun. How
Exactly.
much you want to spend there as well.
Exactly.
Well, again, thank you both very much. I appreciate it. And again, if I think to drive home the point, though, if you have specific questions about the laws, you need to speak to an attorney or contact Elmer or Sergeant Horn at the Sheriff's
Yes.
Department. This is an area though that you really don't want to guess at. You don't want to take any second chances. So check with a lawyer, check with somebody at the Sheriff's Department, and make sure that what you're doing and what you're carrying and how you're carrying it are on the up and up.
It's always like I say, how much do you value your freedom? And if you want to spend the time to research what, when, where, and how, we offer that class free of charge. So by all means.
I took it a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
So
We've
I'm
been
on the loose now, so watch out.
We've been offering it for quite a while.
Yes,
now.
you
And
have.
this is something the sheriff does, wants us to do for free. So you don't want to, we have to pay for enough in this world. So he says this is something we can do back for the county.
Well, and there's nothing more important to continuing firearms ownership and safe firearms ownership than education.
Exactly.
So if you have a gun, become educated, because otherwise you don't know what can happen. And it's not only something that is a safety factor, but it's also an enjoyment factor. It's a lot of fun to get out there and do it. So learn, have fun, and be safe.
Those zombie targets are a lot of fun. And pumpkins. Well, and knowledge is power, so always educate
Yes.
yourself.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Well, again, thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Sergeant Horn.
you.
And that will conclude this episode of Legally Speaking.